The Fraser River comes from the northwest in this direction, and this is a side channel up the Fraser River called Minto Channel. And in the winter, these areas have very low flow, but it's really good quality gravel here and clean water. So these are extremely valuable spawning grounds, and the chum salmon and in other years pink salmon would spawn in these side channels, and the egg survival would be very good. And as we get higher water in the spring, this entire gravel bar would be inundated, flooded, and this is where the sturgeon often spawn on the tops of these gravel bars. So these areas right now, it looks a bit like a biological desert when you get away from the channel, but these are essential habitat. Gravel, without gravel, salmon cannot survive. Without these gravel bars, the sturgeon have no place to spawn. So these are fairly essential habitats, and one of the first ways we can destroy them and ruin them is by humans channelizing the river, dredging the river, removing the gravel, building rip-rap walls along the river. And in the lower Fraser River, this is our last section of the river that's relatively wild, and it should be protected this way in perpetuity if we want salmon and other species of wild fish.
So what have they been doing here?
What happened here is that with the provincial monies, a bridge was built across at this point. It's been since removed, and a road was built over to Harrison Bar for the removal of over 100,000 cubic meters of gravel. And the gravel from here would come across a road on a temporary bridge onto the existing roadway behind the camera and to one of the local gravel plants. Most of them are owned by Lafarge right now. DFO presented a brief to the province. The province thought the Lower Mainland was running out of gravel in 1999-2000. They put together an inquiry, held hearings in the Fraser Valley, and DFO made a presentation, and I'm just going to quote from that because it's just interesting how government agencies do such flip-flops on these issues. The brief that was presented to this gravel removal committee, or the Finding New Gravel Pit Committee, DFO said the removal of aggregate from river channel sources is harmful to fish habitat. And then they go through all of the detailed impacts it has. And then they conclude by saying in situations where gravel removal is proposed other than commercial reasons, in other words, you're not to take gravel out of rivers for commercial purposes, that just isn't part of the game anymore. However, you can take it out for one-time flood control. DFO will review the proposals on an individual basis. However, an authorization under the Habitat section of the Fisheries Act will be granted only where there is clear evidence that the operation has a desired beneficial effect of flood control and there are adequate mitigation measures in place to reduce impacts to fish and fish habitat. At that time, late 1990s, DFO had laid several charges against gravel removal in the Fraser River from the 1970s right up to about the year 2000. And when I was at DFO, we pushed for a moratorium in the 1980s and into the 90s. We did have a moratorium of sorts, and we thought, well, that moratorium was in place, an overall plan could be developed. We would then know in great detail where the fish are, where the good gravel is, where the gravel is created, where it is eroded away every year, where do the fish spawn, put good maps together, and come up with an overall management plan. As part of that plan, it would also include where we need better dikes, where we can allow development, where we have to protect the riparian vegetation, and where gravel could be removed. And despite efforts, that plan was never developed. And then the issue became a big election issue in the Chilliwack area, and the two MLAs here pushed for the lifting of the moratorium. The province signed an agreement with DFO, a 5-year agreement to allow massive removals of gravel from the Fraser River. A lot of us still wonder where in the heck was DFO when they signed that agreement, but we appreciate it when we got an ATIP from MP John Cummings that DFO sent a briefing note to Ottawa saying it was important to build relations in this part of the valley, and staff were to allow the removal of gravel from the Fraser River and ensure a $40,000 a year profit to a certain group of people. And right there, DFO started to give the game away. We met with DFO before Spring Bar occurred, and the DFO manager said, yeah, he was really concerned about that removal of the bar, but he promised a very open process with the gravel removal committee here, and there'd be compensation, he assured us and everything. And then the process started. There was no compensation. They shut off all our files. They wouldn't let us see any files. And then the DFO manager said the removal of that gravel bar didn't harm fish at all. And when I made a comment, I wrote an email to him and I said, hey, that's misleading. You've misled the public and you're being unscientific. And actually, I was sued for making that comment, and I didn't even make it in the press. John Less
proudly stood on the gravel bar with cameras. I saw it on the weather network, and he said we can remove millions and millions and millions of cubic meters of gravel from this lake, and we won't touch a fish. Well, he was saying that DFO issued a permit to the contractor or the band to kill pink fry and destroy pink eggs. And then pilings were put in the river. The province spent $1 million to build a bridge, and then it was determined that they didn't have to remove the pilings in the river. In fact, I think they're still out there right now, and that really means that they want to go back there and get more gravel.